ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರಗಳು. Chairman of Taxation Committee, a very well-known and dynamic chartered accountant, Sri Karnatak ji, the guest speaker of today's evening, Chirag, Kataria, members of Chamber of Commerce Industries, friends. First, when this program was scheduled at 4:30, when I came and taught that time, मुझे ऐसा लग रहा था कि शायद सब लोग जयशंकर की तरफ जा रहे हैं और बहुत कम लोग, लेकिन after seeing such a big business audience, I am thrilled to welcome you all. On behalf of Karnatak Chamber of Commerce Industries, on behalf of my President, Secretary and Vice President, I would like to welcome the young chartered accountant Chirag Kataria, who has come to enlighten us about various schemes और पैसा कैसे करना है. So Chirag Kataria, hearty welcome to you on behalf of all of us. I would also like to welcome, as I rightly said, a very charming personality, young chartered accountant Shri Karnatak ji, as a chairman of Taxation Committee. He is doing lot of great work for business community. Not only hearty welcome to you. We have Mr. Bharti, who is the president of Greater इंटरेस्टेड, हार्टी वेलकम टू यू सर. मुझे आज बहुत खुशी हुई कि चैम्बर ऑफ कॉमर्स के आज भाग्य खुल गए हैं, क्योंकि बहुत से व्यापारी लोग आज हमारे सेमिनार में जानकारी लेने के लिए वर्किंग डे होने के बावजूद इतनी बड़ी तादाद में आप लोग आए. मैं कर्नाटक चैम्बर ऑफ कॉमर्स इंडस्ट्री तरफ से ಬಂದಂತ ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಬ್ಬ ವ್ಯಾಪಾರಸ್ಥ ಬಂಧುಗಳಿಗೆ ಹೃದಯ ತುಂಬವಾಗಿ ಸ್ವಾಗತ ಕೋರುತ್ತಾ, I request Karnatak Shetty kindly continue, and I request you to have more and more programs for the benefit of business community, because there are a lot of confusion about GST, online, whatever rules are there. All the rules and regulations are only for business community. I feel very sorry, so I request all the budding chartered accountants to have more and more such kind of program. I am indeed thankful to you for conducting this, and once again welcome you all.
Thank you, sir. MSME, that is the Medium, Small and Micro Industries Development Act, which was passed in 2003, and later on the fresh definition of what is a micro industry, what is a small industry, and what is a medium industry, which was again revised in 2020. Okay, considering this and how these entities, okay, the payments to these entities under income tax, the deductions which will be allowed. So that is what we are going to understand in today's technical session. A brief about our speaker for today, CA Chirag. CA Chirag has been practicing for the last 9 years. He's one of probably, I mean, his office is right above Chambers, for the proximity wise, the closest CA to Chambers. He's one of the dynamic chartered accountants, I mean, who has expertise in not only income tax, and he's also well-versed with GST law and procedures, and he's also pursuing his diploma in information system audit and diploma in insurance and risk management. He has completed certification course on forensic accounting and fraud prevention from Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. He is currently managing partner at Messrs. DRCB and Co. Chartered Accountants. So this session 43 BH amendment. So probably Chirag is the speaker who has already handled 3-4 times in various forums. Yesterday he was in Gadar to address on the same topic. He has addressed fellow chartered accountants also. So he is one of the very right persons to address the gathering. He has the accumulated knowledge of last 3-4 sessions under the same topic. So I'm sure his previous sessions, the value addition, what he has understood in this his previous sessions will definitely be useful for all of us. I now present the dash to Chirag.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, esteemed members of the managing committee, distinguished personalities, and each of one who is present here for today's seminar. Firstly, I extend my heartfelt thanks to the managing committee of KCCI for providing unwavering support and this platform today to enlighten us about Section 43BH. It is an honor and privilege to be present here this evening. So before starting with the Section 43BH of Income Tax Act, what is the purpose of this enactment? Why this law was enacted in today's time? What was the need for this enactment? We need to know before going into ahead with Section 43BH. What was the need for the government? Why this section was introduced? So central government thinks MSME plays a significant role in the Indian economy. As we are global leaders now, as India is progressing in the global forum also, so government thinks MSME plays an important role. Why it is so? Why is MSME a very important sector? Because in today's time, as on today there are 6.82 CR of micro enterprise registered under MSME. There are around more than 2 crores of 2 crores of small enterprises registered under MSME and more than about 56 to 58,000 medium enterprises. So what is the significance of this sector? So India is around 3.5, more than 3.5 trillion GDP economy. The MSME sector contributes 27% of it. So in the 3.67 trillion economy, this MSME sector contributes more than 27% of it. So government thinks this is extremely important sector. Under MSME, 15.50 crores people are employed by MSME. 15 of the total population of India, 15.50 crores are employed by MSME. So on the total exports, MSME covers 45% of those exports. Whatever the figures we have in the export, the total figures under that 45% of is covered by MSME sector. So government thinks this is an extremely important sector for running the Indian economy. So what they have done, they have done a study. What is the major issue? What is the major issue these MSME sector are facing? After having a thorough study on the problem, they have come up with the most critical issue. What it is? It is a credit liquidity issue. It is credit money liquidity issue. This is MSME sector is facing. So what is the amount this MSME credit liquidity is facing? It is around 20 to 25 trillion credit liquidity issues are being faced by the MSME sector. This was the issue. Then government set up a committee to find out a ways to reduce this credit liquidity issue of the MSME. So after recommendations received from the committee, government came up with measures to reduce this credit liquidity. What are these measures? Now they have said that you can MSME sector without collateral. This is to reduce the credit liquidity issue. Then they have come with the subsidies which are extended to MSME sector. They have reduced the rate of interest for particularly MSME sector. They have been informed to all the financial institutions that whatever you charge the rate of interest, you reduce it by 1% to MSME sector. These are reforms or measures brought by the central government. Even after these measures, the issue of credit liquidity was not yet resolved fully. So again, government made an amendment in MSME Act itself by introducing Section 15 and Section 23. What is Section 15? So Section 15 talks about the payment timeline, and Section 23 talks about the interest. If we do not pay to micro, small, or medium enterprises within the timeline specified under Section 15, then we have to pay interest to MSME sector at 3 times the rate notified by the RBI, bank rate. So if the bank rate is charging 6% for our loan, we have to pay 18% to MSME sector if we go up beyond the timeline as per Section 15. Even after this introduction and after the intercession of this section in MSME Act, the credit issue was not yet resolved. Then again, government came up with this amendment, like Section 43BH. It says that basically in a short form, it says that if the payment is to be made to a micro or a small enterprise, if you don't make the payment within the timeline, the expense will be allowed only in the year when it is paid, not in the year when it is booked. That was the amendment they have brought. So why now there are very ways for reacting to this amendment. People are reacting in many different ways. Like they will stop purchases from micro small enterprise. They will return all the goods. So this is all the negative things coming into the ecosystem. So government again will have a thought that how I make people to comply to this law. So by having a positive mindset, we will have a look on section 43BH. How we'll understand and how it can be made applicable in day-to-day process. Yes, I agree, there might be some difficulty in the applicability, but we have to understand as on date, we have to understand and apply to our businesses because it is made applicable from 1/4/2023. So now we'll have a look on section 43BH, what it says. So section 43BH. So are you comfortable with English and Hindi? Okay. So I'll start with section 43BH. So as per income tax, the definition of the section is notwithstanding anything contained in any other provisions of the Act and deduction otherwise allowable under the Act in respect of payment made to micro or small enterprise beyond the time limit specified under the Act under section 15 of MSME B Act 2006. It will be allowed in computing the income under section 28 in the previous year in which the payment has actually been made. The first provision to section 43B doesn't apply. So what does it mean? Agar koi buyer, if he wants to make if he has any payment to be made to, if he has any payment made to a micro or small enterprise, if he doesn't make the payment within the timeline specified under section 15, then the expense will not be allowed. The expense will not be allowed in the year in which it is claimed, but it will be allowed in the year in they are a 43BH. So A, B, C, D, they are total 5 more provisions that was introduced earlier. Like कोई भी अगर हम ESI PF का payment करते हैं, if we make any delay in making ESI PF payment, वो अपने को till the date of filing of income tax तक मिलता था उसका. We have to get the benefit of to claim the expenditure in the year till we make the payment till the filing of the income tax return. But इस केस में in particular वो provision इसको applicable नहीं है. अगर हमने उस साल में अगर वो विद इन द टाइम लिमिट हम अगर उसको पेमेंट नहीं करते हैं तो उसका एक्सपेंडिचर हमको नहीं मिलेगा. अगर हमने उसको अपना रिटर्न फाइलिंग से पहले भी किया है तो उसको नहीं मिलेगा. इफ यू मेक द पेमेंट बिफोर द फाइलिंग ऑफ रिटर्न आल्सो विल नॉट गेट द डिडक्शन. दिस फर्स्ट प्रोविजन इज नॉट एप्लीकेबल. As I said, this section is applicable from 1/4/2023. So now, this whether you follow, there are two types of accounting system. दो type का accounting system है. Cash accounting system, accrual accounting system. For cash accounting system, it doesn't make any difference. क्योंकि cash accounting system में हम whenever we make any payment or receive any payment, then only we account in our books of account. So it doesn't make any difference for cash basis of accounting. But accrual system of accounting में we debit or credit income as per the accrual system of accounting. So section 43B is the exception to that accrual system of accounting. वो एक ही section है जो exception है accrual system of accounting. वो section बोलता है जब आप पेमेंट करोगे जब भी आपको उसका खर्चा मिलेगा. आप अगर आप कैश सिस्टम फॉलो करो या अक्रूवल सिस्टम फॉलो करो उससे उनको कोई मतलब नहीं है. इफ यू मेक द पेमेंट एज पर द स्पेसिफाइड टाइमलाइन देन ओनली विल गेट द डिडक्शन इन दैट प्रीवियस ईयर. दैट इज व्हाट दिस सेक्शन सेज. Is disallowance under section 43BH a permanent disallowance? अभी जो अपने को disallowance मिलता है, this year में हमने पेमेंट नहीं किया, उसमें अपने को खर्चा नहीं मिलेगा, पर this year हम पेमेंट करते हैं, उसमें अपने को खर्चा मिलेगा. Means if you make the payment in next succeeding year, then we will get the deduction. But in the year of payment, so it is not a permanent disallowance कि एक बार आपके इनकम में वो खर्चा ऐड कर दिया है, तो नेक्स्ट ईयर जब आप पेमेंट करोगे, वो इनकम से वो खर्चा माइनस कर देंगे वापस. बस वो टाइमिंग डिफरेंस है. इट इज अ टाइमिंग डिसअलाउंस, नॉट अ परमानेंट डिसअलाउंस. अगर इस साल मेरा प्रॉफिट 5 लाख है, अब मैंने अगर एक एमएसएमई को पेमेंट नहीं किया 5 लाख, तो वो 5 लाख वो प्रॉफिट के साथ ऐड हो जाएगा उस साल. फिर नेक्स्ट ईयर जब मैं पेमेंट करता हूँ, मेरे प्रॉफिट एंड लॉस के वहां से वो वापस 5 लाख माइनस हो जाएगा. इट इज अ टाइमिंग डिफरेंस. तो इस साल क्या होगा, अपने को ज्यादा इनकम टैक्स भरना पड़ेगा. नेक्स्ट ईयर क्या होगा, अपने को will have less advance tax to be paid. It is only a timing difference and not a permanent difference. What is the effective date of applicability of section 43BH? कब से ये section लागू है? So it is applicable for transaction on or after incurred after 1/4/2023. So any transaction for the financial year 23-24, then only it is applicable. Now, if you have any sundry creditors payable as on 31/3/2023, and if you have not made the payment, हमने इसको पेमेंट इस साल तक भी नहीं किया है, as on 31/3/2024, एक सेक्शन उसको applicable नहीं है. This is only applicable for the transaction done during the year, not of the previous year. क्योंकि जब हमने previous year फाइलिंग किया तो उसका खर्चा ऑलरेडी हमने इनकम टैक्स में क्लेम कर दिया है. So we do not have any issues with the deduction. Because we have already claimed the deduction in the previous year. This is the only balance lying as on balance sheet date 31/3/2023. And if we do not make any payment up to 31/3/2024 also, we will not be attracted by section 43BH. See, it is only applicable for transaction incurred during the year financial year 2023-24. अपने previous year के transaction को this section applicable नहीं है. So whether section 43BH is applicable only to tax audit cases? नहीं, ये सभी assessee को applicable है. It is applicable to all the assessee. If a tax audit, if a assessee has a turnover of 1.5 CR and he do not opt for section 44AD, and if he does his books of account audited, gets audited by a chartered accountant, even he has to follow this section 43BH. It is applicable to all the assessee who follows tax audit or do not follow. So now the second question will be whether it is applicable to assessee who follows presumptive taxation, who files their return of income under section 44AD, 44ADA. We declare on the turnover we declare 8%, or if in case of profession we declare on 50% of the turnover as a profit. That section 43BH presumptive tax cases को applicable नहीं है, क्योंकि वही सेक्शन इट स्टार्ट्स विद नॉटविथस्टैंडिंग एनीथिंग कंटेन कॉन्ट्रैक्टरी इन सेक्शन 28 to 44C. जो प्रेजेंटिव टैक्सेशन का वर्डिंग है उसके स्टार्ट में ही वो बोलता है कि जो भी इस सेक्शन में लिखा है 28 से 44C में वो एप्लीकेबल नहीं है मुझे. तो 44 के बीच में 43 आता है. So it doesn't apply to this section 43BH. It is not applicable to presumptive tax cases. Apart from that, it is applicable to each and every assessee. Whether if you have a turnover of 6 crore and if you have a receipts and payment in banking channel up to 95%, you are not getting your books of account audited, but you have to comply with section 43BH. It is only not applicable to presumptive taxation cases who declare their income under this section 44AD, 44ADA, because this section speaks with 20 override section 28 to 44C. So what would be the position if the registration is taken from middle of the year? Nowadays what happens, supplier also is getting updated. तो वो क्या करते हैं, सपोज 1 अक्टूबर 2023 को रजिस्ट्रेशन लेते हैं, तो अपने को क्या है, पहले 23 से पहले जैसे हमने 1 अप्रैल 2023 से 30 सितंबर 2023 तक हमने उनके साथ व्यवहार किया है. If you have made any purchases from these vendors, whether this section is applicable? No. Registration is mandatory for this section to be applicable. अगर मैंने कोई आपका सप्लायर he has taken any registration under MSME Act on the middle of the year or any date after the 1/4/2003, it will be applicable from the date of his registration. So any transaction incurred before the date of registration is not liable for section 43BL. You can make the payment as per your payment condition. उसके लिए वो लागू नहीं है. तो सप्लायर का रजिस्ट्रेशन लेना बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है इसमें. If it takes कई middle of the year or if it takes in the January और आज लेता है, तो आज से अगर हम उनके साथ कोई व्यवहार करते हैं तो उनकी पेमेंट सेक्शन 15 के हिसाब से होनी चाहिए. That is what it talks. अगर कोई सप्लायर है उसका he is not registered under MSME Act, उसके लिए वो अगर हम उनसे परचेज करते हैं और अगर हम पेमेंट उसको टाइमलाइन के हिसाब से नहीं करते हैं, this section is not applicable. उसको वो सेक्शन applicable नहीं होगा. तो MSME classification. तो MSME classification में there are three more important definition. एक buyer, what is buyer, what is enterprises and what is supplier. Buyer किसको बोलते हैं, enterprise कौन है, supplier कौन है. What is the definition of this? Before going into MSME Act, these three definitions are most important in today's seminar to understand whether what is applicable to us. हम कौन से buyer से लेंगे तो क्या applicable है अपने को. So now what do you mean by a buyer? Buyer means whoever buys any goods or service from a supplier for consideration. Buyer means any person who buys any goods or receives any service from a supplier for consideration. So what do you mean by enterprise? Enterprise बोले तो industrial undertaking or business concern or an establishment by whatever name called is engaged in manufacturing or production of goods or rendering of any service is termed as enterprise. Enterprise का definition clear है, वो बोलता है a business concern who is engaged in manufacturing or production of goods or rendering of any service is termed as enterprise under MSME Act. So now we come to the definition of supplier. Supplier means what? Supplier means a micro or small enterprise which has filed a memorandum with the authority under section 8 subsection 1. So what do you mean by supplier? Supplier is a micro or a small enterprise who has filed a memorandum with the authority. What do you mean by who has filed a memorandum with the authority? It means he has taken the registration under Udyam registration. He has registered himself under the MSME Act by taking Udyam registration certificate. This is the meaning of supplier. So we have gone through the definition of buyer is a person who buys goods or receives any service from a supplier for consideration. Enterprise means a business concern or an industrial undertaking or an establishment by whatever name calls who is into manufacturing or production of goods or rendering of service. Supplier is a person means a micro or small enterprise who has filed a memorandum with the authority under section 8 subsection 1. So these are the definitions of buyers, enterprise and supplier. So what do you mean by micro and small enterprise? फिर micro किसे बोलते हैं, small किसे बोलते हैं? So there are some definition for this. So now who is said as micro and who is said as small? So micro के लिए दो condition है. The turnover should be below 5 CR, up to 5 CR, and investment in plant and machinery should be up to 1 CR. And small के लिए the turnover limit is 5 to 50 CR and investment in plant machinery it is 1 to 10 CR. So these are the two conditions. So ये दोनों condition satisfy होना है. If you fall outside this condition, any one of the condition we go upgrade ourselves to the higher enterprise. Suppose my turnover is 6 CR and my investment in plant and machinery is only 20 lakh. I will be termed as small enterprise, not as micro enterprise, because my दोनों condition is not getting satisfied. So both the condition are cumulative. अपने को दोनों condition satisfy करना है. In terms of micro, the turnover limit is up to 5 CR and investment in plant and machinery is up to 1 CR. And in case of small enterprises, the turnover limit is 5 to 50 CR and investment in plant and machinery it is up to 10 CR. both the condition has to be satisfied cumulatively. दोनों कंडीशन एक साथ सेटिस्फाई होना है. अगर मेरा टर्नओवर ज्यादा हो गया और प्लांट एंड मशीनरी इज विद इन द लिमिट, आई विल अपग्रेड टू द हायर एंटरप्राइज. अगर मेरा टर्नओवर 60 करोड़ है और प्लांट एंड मशीनरी इन्वेस्टमेंट में सिर्फ 9 CR है, मेरे को मीडियम एंटरप्राइज बोला जाएगा, मेरे को स्मॉल एंटरप्राइज नहीं बोला जाएगा. अभी द नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन इज टर्नओवर बोल तो क्या सर? व्हाट डू यू मीन बाय टर्नओवर? टर्नओवर बोल तो क्या? टर्नओवर का मीनिंग अपने को इसमें एक्ट में ऑलरेडी स्पेसिफाई किया है. इफ इट इज रिलेटेड टू अ सिंगल पैन, एनी whoever assessee who has multiple GST under a single pan, तो वो सब स्टेट का टर्नओवर ऐड करके वो टर्नओवर के डेफिनेशन पे आना है अपने को. वी हैव टू ऐड ऑल द स्टेट्स टर्नओवर linked to a single pan, then we have to come whether it is a micro enterprise or small enterprise or a medium enterprise. What about export turnover? Sir, I have एक assessee है, उसका टर्नओवर 100 CR है, बट उसका 100 CR के टर्नओवर में 60 CR टर्नओवर इज एक्सपोर्ट CR, एक्सपोर्ट टर्नओवर. तो इस टर्नओवर के डेफिनेशन में एक्सपोर्ट टर्नओवर इज एक्सक्लूडेड. एक्सपोर्ट टर्नओवर को हम माइनस कर देते हैं. अगर मेरा कोई एसएससी है who has a turnover of 100 CR, in that 100 CR 60 CR comes from export, then this turnover of export has to be reduced from the total turnover to arrive at the criteria of turnover and investment in plant and machinery. Turnover के लिए it is linked to a single pan. If you have GST number in all the states of India, then you have to add all the turnover of all those GST then to arrive at a turnover figure. In turnover, export turnover is not included. Export turnover is not included. So what about plant and machinery? Sir, plant and machinery का क्या? So plant and machinery हम जो इनकम टैक्स में WDV बताते हैं ईयर ऑन ईयर जब हम डेप्रिसिएशन क्लेम करते हैं, तो वी हैव टू टेक द WDV ऑफ द प्लांट एंड मशीनरी. प्लांट एंड मशीनरी डेफिनेशन इज टू बी टेकन फ्रॉम इनकम टैक्स एक्ट 1961 व्हिच सेज दैट फर्नीचर एंड फिटिंग्स नहीं आता है प्लांट एंड मशीनरी में, लैंड एंड बिल्डिंग नहीं आता है. इट इज ओनली प्योरली प्लांट एंड मशीनरी व्हिच इज टू बी टेकन फॉर द फिगर्स ऑफ 1 or up to 1 to 10 CR for the criteria purpose. It is on the WDV, written down value, not at the original cost. हमको original cost नहीं लेना है. Every year when we apply depreciation on the plant and machinery, whatever the figures stated at our schedules on the fixed asset and the balance sheet, we have to take that figure. It is on the WDV figure, not on the original cost. So now I have already said that all units with GST number listed against the same pan shall be collectively treated as an enterprise. Export of goods or service or both shall be excluded while calculating the turnover of any enterprise. Export turnover we have to exclude while calculating the turnover. Then with regard to investment in plant and machinery, we have to take the income tax return as the base. Whatever value we are declaring in the income tax return of that previous year, that will be the value of investment in plant and machinery. Whether registration under MSME Act mandatory for applicability of section 43BH? Yes. अगर कोई भी supplier, if any supplier who has been registered under the act, then only we are liable to make the payment within the timeline. Otherwise, this section doesn't apply to a buyer who buys from a supplier who is not registered under MSME Act 2006. So, a supplier has to be registered under the MSME Act for the applicability of this section, and he should be micro or small. वो section clearly बोलता है medium को applicable नहीं है. It is only applicable to a micro or a small enterprise and not a medium enterprise. Whether yearly updation of information mandatory? Now, as a manufacturer or a service provider, the supplier takes the Udyam registration, but he doesn't renew or doesn't update it yearly. So, what is the status? If the supplier doesn't renew or update his Udyam certificate every year, his license gets suspended. So, all the benefits flowing to him will get stopped. So, अगर आपका कोई supplier है, you have requested him with the Udyam registration certificate. He has given you a 2 years back registered certificate. So we will not be, अपने को वो section 43BH applicable नहीं है. we have to request him for the updated registration, Udyam registration certificate from the supplier. If we do not update his certificate every year, then we are not liable to make the payment as per the timeline specified under the Act. So updation of Udyam registration certificate is very important. So what is the time limit for updation? So now suppose when we finish the year 22, current year 23-24, there is no timeline specified under the Act. But after in the month of June, July, the supplier has to update its Udyam certificate based on self declaration. कि मेरा 12 महीने पिछले 12 महीने का टर्नओवर किया था, मेरा इन्वेस्टमेंट इन प्लांट एंड मशीनरी कितना है. On the self declaration basis, he has to update this information under Udyam registration. Otherwise, for the year 24-25, we will not be liable to for the applicability of section 43BH. So supplier has to update his Udyam registration every year, mandatory. Whether trader is covered under MSME Act for for section 43BH applicability. So now this is a question which is being discussed in every forum. कि प्योर ट्रेडर है हमको अप्लीकेबल है क्या सर? अगर हम किसी को गुड्स बेचते हैं और हम प्योर ट्रेडर है तो हमको कोई पेमेंट देगा विद इन द टाइमलाइन? ट्रेडर फॉर प्योर ट्रेडर दिस इज नॉट एप्लीकेबल, क्योंकि when during COVID times, so there was a memorandum given to the central government by all these association that during COVID we are facing liquidity issue and bankers are not financing us. So kindly provide a way out. So what government has done through an office memorandum on 1/7/2021, they have issued an office memorandum stating that a trader can take a Udyam registration only for priority sector lending. Only for lending purpose he can take the registration, not purpose. Then again on 2nd September 2021, again one office memorandum has come from the government stating that all the benefits of section 15 will not be applicable to a pure trader. A supplier who is registered as a pure trader, for the buyer who is buying from a pure trader, for him that section is not applicable. So if you make any delay in payment to a trader, then this we are not hit by this section 43BH. वो प्योर ट्रेडिंग के लिए एप्लीकेबल नहीं है. अगर ट्रेडर है और मैं मैन्युफैक्चरर भी हूं, मेरा 100 करोड़ का टर्नओवर में 90 करोड़ ट्रेडिंग टर्नओवर है, 10 करोड़ टर्नओवर इज मैन्युफैक्चरिंग, वेदर आई एम एप्लीकेबल? यस. अगर पार्ट ऑफ हिज टर्नओवर इज आल्सो फ्रॉम मैन्युफैक्चरिंग, वो एज अ मैन्युफैक्चरर रजिस्टर हो जाएगा. So then we have to make the payment to that supplier within the timeline. If a trader who is also a manufacturer and he only from that turnover from small part of his manufacturing, then also we have to make the payment within the time. So this section is not applicable for a pure trader. If a trader is also a manufacturer, then this section is applicable. If we buy from a supplier who is both a trader and a manufacturer, then we have to make the payment within the timeline specified under this Act. Whether applicable to transaction between sister concern. Now every SSC might have one or more sister concern with them. So whether payments to sister concern are applicable under 43BH? Yes. So if we make any purchase or sales to a sister concern, and if the sister concern is a micro or a small enterprise, then the other party, that is sister concern, has to make the payment within the timeline. There is no specific exclusion. It is applicable to everything, every transaction of a sister concern. So if a sister concern has made a transaction of purchase and sales, and if we do not make the payment, then this section is applicable to the buyer. So it is applicable to a sister concern transaction also. So now this is more one of the most important question. How is buyer supposed to know the classification of the supplier? अपने को कैसे मालूम पड़ेगा कि सामने वाला what it is his status, whether it is a micro, it is a small enterprise, or whether it is a medium enterprise. Now suppose I have a PAN of a supplier. I cannot search his status with having just only PAN. अपने को और एक सप्लायर से रिक्वेस्ट करना पड़ेगा टू काइंडली प्रोवाइड देयर उद्यम रजिस्ट्रेशन सर्टिफिकेट. With that Udyam registration certificate, then only we'll get to know his status, whether he is a manufacturer or a trader or a service provider, whether he is under which category, micro, small or medium. As such, अगर मैं buyer हूँ, if I am purchasing goods from Delhi, I will not get to know the status of the supplier. If he only and when if he supplies or if he provide me with the Udyam certificate, then only I can verify his status. Now, in recent times, government has come with has come up with one more facility in the Udyam registration portal, that if you have only the Udyam registration, then you insert that Udyam registration and enter the captcha, you will get the details of that supplier. Before, OTP was compulsory. OTP of the person who is getting registered, OTP was compulsory. Now, if you have any suppliers only Udyam registration number also, we can search on the Udyam portal and get the details of that supplier, whether he is a micro enterprise or a small enterprise or a medium enterprise. So this is one of the facility provided by the government as of now. But if you have the PAN or GST number, sir, apne ko status malum padega, will not be able to give you any data, any status about the supplier. So every buyer has to send a mail requesting the supplier to kindly provide the updated Udyam certificate. So he has to provide the updated Udyam certificate. If you provide old certificate, then again request him through a mail that kindly provide your updated certificate. Otherwise, we'll consider that you are not registered under the MSME Act. So this is how it looks. If he is a trader and if he updates every year, then every year's classification, enterprise type and classification date comes in that certificate itself. This is just a image of that whole certificate. If a trader is registered under MSME, then under the trading, it comes like for availing benefits of priority sector lending. Only for the bank loan purpose, he has taken the Udyam registration, not for any other purpose. And he has updated his status every year. So in the year 2023, he was classified as a small. In the year 23-24, he is classified as medium. Now, in case of manufacturing, it looks in this form. If it is a manufacturing, it comes in the manufacturing, or if it is a service provider, it comes in this form, in that certificate. And whenever he updates his certificate, it comes in that year-wise chronological order against having a trail when he has updated his certificate. So suppose that the supplier has provided you a certificate with only 21-22, then kindly ask for 23-24 updation. If he gives you old certificate, again request him in a mail or a letterhead, not WhatsApp chat, through a legal form, that kindly provide your MSME certificate, updated one. That is more important. Thus, it is important to take the updated certificate from all the vendors. Whether foreign parties are covered, now MSME sector imports few goods from foreign countries. Whether we have to make the payment to foreign parties within the timeline specified. So this section is not applicable for purchases for imports what we have made. So because the supplier will not be registered under the MSME Act, hence the buyer is not hit by this section 43BH. So whenever a buyer purchases or imports from other countries, this section is not hit. You can make the payment as per your timelines agreed with the importer. So provisions applicable when both the parties are micro and small enterprise. Buyer भी micro and small enterprise में classified है, and your supplier is also micro and small enterprise. दोनों भी micro and small है. So whether the transaction occurred between them is applicable for liable for section 43BH? Yes. Yes, government was major issue was to reduce the credit liquidity of MSME sector. But whenever there is a transaction between two micro and small enterprises, buyer and seller, the buyer has to make the payment. Even if he is a small or micro enterprise, he has to make the payment within a timeline. There is no exception to this. अगर दोनों ट्रांजेक्शन में दोनों पार्टी माइक्रो और स्मॉल एंटरप्राइजेस है, दोनों मैन्युफैक्चरर है और या सर्विस प्रोवाइडर है, if we purchase the supply, if the buyer purchase from that supplier, he has to make the payment even if he's a micro or a small enterprise. There is no exception. Line. I mean, this is section 15 of MSME Act speaks about payment timeline. So, what do you mean by payment timeline? Section 15, liability of the buyer to make the payment. So, when a supplier supplies any goods or renders any service to a buyer, the buyer has to make the payment on the date agreed between the supplier, between him and the supplier, on or before the agreed date. If there is no agreement, then the payment has to be made before the appointed date. So what do you mean by this wording? So now section 15 is talks about the liability of the buyer to make the payment. So when any supplier supplies any goods to a buyer or renders any service, then the buyer has to make the payment on or before the date agreed upon between him and the supplier in writing, or where there is no agreement in this behalf before the appointed date. So provided that in no case the period agreed between the buyer and supplier cannot exceed 45 days. So now there are 2 points in section 15. If there is an agreement, if the agreement is not there. So we'll talk about if the agreement is there. So agreement has to be in writing. Compulsory, it should be in the letterhead, or it should be communicated to an email, or it should be conveyed through a letter. It should be in writing. No WhatsApp chats are allowed here. It will not be. It will be not holding good in the court of law. Whenever there is a dispute between buyer and seller of the IT income tax department, the chats of WhatsApp chat will not be legally given legal preference. So it should be in writing. The agreement can be in any form. If the supplier supplies you any invoice, and in the invoice he writes that payment has to be made within 30 days, even that is fine. So there is no, as such, you can make an MOU or you can send him a mail. So what are your payment timelines? We agree that we hereby agree that on the mutual consent we make a payment up to 40 days. So it should be in writing, or it is communicated through a mail, or it can be on a letterhead, or it can be on a purchase order, or it can be also in the invoice. But it should be in writing. So if the buyer and supplier agrees in a writing up to 60 days, that we make a payment on 60 days. But as per this section, we have to make the payment within 45 days. If we don't make the payment within 45 days, then we will be hit by this section. The buyer will not be allowed to take the deduction of that expenditure. Compulsory, जो भी agreement का time period हो, it is limited, extended up to 45 days. अगर beyond crossing 45 days, we have to make the payment within 45 days.
So 45 is the deadline.
Yes, maximum deadline.
सर अगर एग्रीमेंट में 60 डेज का ये है तो 45 डेज का 60 डेज का पेमेंट नहीं आता है तो क्या करें?
Sir, under MSME, there are rules that you can have a case on the buyer. You can do a case under the MSME Act also. MSME Act के लिए separately there is a provision where you can do a case on the buyer also if it doesn't make your payment within the timeline. Or you can also demand interest, which is 3 times the bank rate, which is legal and which is allowed under the Act. So now, here there are 3 most important definition in this payment timeline. Now we have discussed about the agreement date. If there is no agreement between the buyer and seller, what is the timeline? It is only 15 days. It is only the 15 days from the date of before the appointed date. If there is no agreement in writing between the buyer and the supplier, the time limit is only 15 days before the date of appointed date. So what do you mean by appointed date? Appointed date किसको बोलते हैं? It is the 16th day from the day of acceptance or deemed date of acceptance. So appointed date का meaning है it is the 16th day from the day of acceptance or date of deemed acceptance. So here we have 2 definitions again. What is date of acceptance? अभी invoice date है 1st March and we have received the goods on 20th March. So the date of acceptance will be on 20th March. We have to make the payment. The timeline starts from the actual delivery of the goods. So date of acceptance means actual delivery of the goods and not the date of invoice. Date of invoice से कोई संबंध नहीं, अपने को actual receive होना चाहिए goods or we have to receive the service. So if you have any objection कि हमने we have requested that kind of quality but parameters में कोई issue आ गया, then you can have to raise a written objection. You have to raise a written objection to the supplier that your goods are not as per the parameters specified in the PO. So kindly take back your goods or will not accept your goods. If you raise this objection within 15 days from the date of receipt of goods, then this timeline stops. Then this timeline stops.
How the party will come to know that on which date we have received the goods?
I'll take up the questions in after the end of my presentation. So if we receive the goods and if we raise a written objection to the supplier, then till the date the supplier resolve that issue or to the satisfaction of the buyer, the payment timeline doesn't start. It only starts again when you are satisfied with the supplier. So if you receive any goods or services from the supplier and if you raise a written objection within days from the receipt of the goods, then we have to make till the satisfaction of the objection, the payment timeline stops. It starts from the date when your objection is satisfied by the supplier. So what is the deemed date of acceptance? If you do not raise any objection within 15 days, it is deemed that you have accepted the goods or the service. There is no fault in the parameters of the goods or the service rendered to you. If you do not raise any objection within 15 days from the date of actual delivery of goods, then it is termed as deemed acceptance of deemed acceptance. So there are three definitions. One is appointed date, one is date of acceptance, and one is deemed date of acceptance. So appointed date is the 16th day from the day of acceptance or deemed date of acceptance. So what is the date of acceptance? It is the actual delivery of goods. माल आना चाहिए अपने को. Suppose you have purchased in the month of March 25th का invoice issue हो गया. आपका goods you are coming from Delhi. So it might take 1 week to reach. It has reached in your godown on 1st April. Agar if you account that invoice on the 1st in April and claim that it is in the month of April, not in the month of March, then it is termed as you have accepted the goods in the first week of April. Because nowadays what happens, some assessee to reconcile with GST, they claim all the invoices of all the goods received after month of March in the month of March only. Because 2B will have an issue in 2B. But in GST also now they have come up with a resolution that we can claim the credit in, we can keep the credit in others column and we can claim again in the next month. Sir, हमारा ही है credit, पर goods अपने को आया नहीं था. It has come in the month of April, so I have not claimed in the. I have kept in the reclaimable credit, and again have claimed in the next month. There is a process in the GST also. So we have to be sure. It is very important that we have to maintain delivery challans. We have to make a stamp on the invoice that what is the date of receipt and all. So it is very important for a buyer whenever he receives the goods, he has to note it down. And what is the receipt date of the goods? There are some examples. So now actual delivery and terms. On April 15, 2023, there was an actual delivery of the goods. And there is no agreed terms between the buyer and seller. And the buyer has made the payment on April 30, 2023. Whether it is allowable expenditure in the year 23-24?
15 days.
Yes, it is allowable. So if we see the second example, April 15, 2023, we have received the goods and there is no agreed terms, but we have made the payment after 11 months, March 15, 2024. Whether it is allowable as expenditure in the year 2023-24? Yes, because it is made in the same year. Yes, he has delayed the payment. I agree that he has delayed the payment by 10 months, but he has made the payment within the same year. So there is no disallowability. The deduction will be allowed in the year of expenditure only, because he has made the payment within the same year. Now, if you see the third example,
Chirag, in second case, he has to pay interest 3 times extra, no?
if that supplier raises an objection in the court of law, then he has to definitely.
It is not a compulsory.
Not a compulsory. So on Feb 28, 2024, Again, we have received a delivery of goods on Feb 28, 2024, and no agreed terms. And he has made the payment of April 2nd, 2024. The expenditure will be allowed in the year 2024 and 25. Because you have missed the payment timeline, the payment timeline was March 5th, 2024. And if you want to claim the expenditure in that year, then he has to make the payment within 31st March. But he has made the payment on April 2nd, 2024. So this means that this expenditure will be disallowed, which says that we have to make the payment within the fifth example. We have received the goods on March 25th, 2024. And 45, there was an agreed terms where we have specified 45 days is the payment timeline. And the party has made a payment on May 5th, 2024. So whether it is allowable, and yes, he has made within the 45 days. Now, if you look into the last example, which talks about 25 the delivery of goods and the agreed terms is 45 days, the payment is made on June 25th, 2024. It is not. It is allowed in the next year. In this year, it will be disallowed under statement of total income, and it will be allowed in the next year. So these were the answers. As you said, we have rightly put it out answers. You slide.